Our guest here today, Professor Gary Craig at Loyola Law School.
You got to have a good reason to do it. And I still, even when I set foot on campus for teach my first class, I wasn't sure I was going to be a good teacher. But I knew I did have a purpose in being there. And my purpose was to try and help students every day that I could. Sometimes you take a job and it turns out not to be a good fit for you. Like, well, that was a waste. I actually don't think it's a waste. I think you can learn as much about what you don't want to do from certain experiences that can help you find your purpose or your passion. I really can't stress enough for young people. There are going to be times when work is just hard and you'd rather be doing something else, but you're making an investment in yourself, and you've got to do that to get where you want to go. And
all right, welcome to another episode of Art of Purpose. We're super excited to have our guest here today, very special guest, somebody that is very near and dear to my heart, to my siblings' heart, to our family's heart. Professor Gary Craig is a clinical professor and teaches civil litigation practice and various courses at Loyola Law School. Since joining the faculty in 2010, he's served in numerous leadership roles, including Associate Dean for Faculty from 2020 to 2023 and Director of Concentrations from 2013 to 2020. Professor Craig has also directed Loyola Summer Institute program and served as a faculty advisor for the Civil Litigation and Advocacy Concentration and Young Lawyers program. In 2013, 15, and 19, Professor Craig received the Excellence in Teaching Award from the graduating class. In 2016, he also received the David P. Leonard Memorial Faculty Service Award. Now, before joining the faculty in Loyola Law School, Professor Craig was a partner in the prestigious Los Angeles office of Sidley Austin, where he practiced in all areas of litigation with a special emphasis in securities, in representing accounting firms and corporations in connections with securities fraud, professional liability, negligence, and breach of contract. He also represented individuals and clients in connection with investigations conducted by the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's Division of Enforcement. One of the things that in particular sets Professor Craig apart, besides that amazing bio, is that he is someone who has had an amazing impact on countless students, attorneys, professionels. We're going to get into this, but he not only touched and helped my family and helped us find our way, helped us in our journey to finding our purpose in life, really. He's also done that throughout his entire life, as we've come to find, and we will discuss. And we're very excited and honored to have Professor Craig here with us. Welcome, Professor.
Thanks, Kenny. I'm trying to figure out who you're actually talking about, because when I hear you say all that, it's a lot to take in, and I'm just really thrilled to be here. I have so much love and respect for you and Sharon and Brandon, who I had the opportunity to teach at Loyola Law School, and I know the folks you've already had on this podcast, and so grateful for the opportunity to be here with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for making the long drive to come out of here.
No problem.
To come out here. So as Professor Craig, and he always tells me to call him by his first name, but I still respectfully call him Professor.
One day.
Is that he was my professor, he was Brandon's professor, and he was Sharon's professor. So he taught all three of us, and has worked with Chelsea with some video stuff. Somebody who has very, very much directly impacted our lives. I want to talk about, just to kind of get going, there's so much that you've done at Loyola, and you in particular have helped underrepresented sort of community students, students from diverse backgrounds, low income, first generation students, and you helped us all find our way. Because I remember, and we'll get into this, but just the first conversation I ever had with you, and you just kind of feel lost. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm in law school, I want to be an attorney, but I have no idea what is next and what I'm doing. And you've helped so many people find their way. And where did all of that start? Because when I started looking into your background, that happened way before Loyola. That happened way before you started practicing. You were always involved in helping people. So in this podcast where we talk about finding your purpose and finding that what is your passion and making that your life and your living. Talk to us a little bit about your background. Where did all that start?
Sure. Well, first of all, it really was a privilege for me to get a chance to work with you. And, little did I know that several years later, Sharon and Brandon were going to come and join the law school community. And then I want to give a shout out to Chelsea as well, because she directed a really phenomenal video on first generation student experience in law school. And so when I think about really the opportunity I've had to work with students and try to make a difference, you and your family are really top of mind for that. In terms of how it came about that I, got to Loyola and focused on working with the students who you mentioned, which for me, it's really students who may not have already come to law school knowing all the answers. I mean, I didn't know all the answers, but I had some advantages, right? Mm-hmm. My grandfather was a lawyer, and my father famously in our family went to law school for a year, but didn't continue. So I certainly had some familiarity with law school. Yeah. But I think what you're asking is for me to take it back.
Yeah, please.
I told you before we started, I'm not really all that comfortable talking about myself.
I know.
But I know that's the purpose here, so I'm going to do it. But, I think there's a few things that really were important for me. And I want to be clear, I don't think I realized this at the time, Kenny, but when I was in high school, there was almost like two different worlds in a way in my high school. In fact, when I was we called it junior high school. I think they call it middle school now, but we called it junior high school. There was talk among folks at my junior high school about not going to the local high school because it was majority minority high school, and that in fact majority black, and so that was a thing. And for me and for my mom, that was not a thing. That was not a reason to not go to a certain school. So I went to Hamilton. I'm a proud graduate of Hamilton High School in Los Angeles. But when I was there, in many ways there were two different worlds. I know I was on the basketball team. If you know me now, you wonder how that was possible. But back in the day, I could play a little bit of ball.
Well, you have a passion for basketball, so I know that.
I definitely do. And most of my teammates were not in the same classes I was in. It was just there was in my looking back on it now, there was a real difference in the experiences that a lot of my teammates had. And again, I don't want to make it sound like I was conscious of that at the time, but as I've looked back at my journey, I think that was a part of it. And when I got to college, I was at Occidental College. I think the most pivotal experience that I had, probably that led me to be where I am today, was that I got a chance to work with the Upward Bound program. And the Upward Bound program is a federally funded program that provides a summer program and continuing work for high school students who are either low income or first in their family to go to college. Okay. And I had a chance to work on that in the summer between my sophomore and junior years. And what was interesting is, most of the students in that program were like my teammates from high school. There was, for that group of students, there was an incredible drive and desire and determination to pursue higher ed. But like we were talking about when you were sort of summarizing what it was like for you, not knowing, the answers to questions and stuff, I think there was a lack of exposure and had been a lack of opportunity. And so during that 6-week summer program, I got to work with some incredible folks, including, Norma Romero, who's my big sister and my mentor, who showed me how you can have an effect and an impact on students. And, what we were doing was helping students with study skills, helping them with, pathway to college, that kind of thing. And I think through that experience, I was able to see how I could make a difference, if you will, have an effect on people in a positive way. And I did that program for a number of years. It really stuck with me. And we could talk about further steps in the journey, but what I do now at Loyola, I work with all students, but I prioritize trying to work with students who may not have all the advantages or have had all the exposure and opportunities. And you mentioned Summer Institute. So I've been involved with a summer program. Now, it's not a residential program the way Upward Bound was, but it's not lost on me that, all these years later, now I'm still doing a summer program where we're trying to provide support, opportunity, exposure for students to set them up for success in law school. Very similar to what we were trying to do with Upward Bound in setting up high school students for success in college.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you're involved in this outbound program, right?
Upward Bound?
Upward Bound, sorry.
Yeah.
Upward Bound. Thank you. And in the help that you're providing those students at that time, what is it that, you saw that you could make a difference, but I think many people are involved in sort of these extracurricular activities because they look good for, let's say, law school application, right, or whatever. And maybe they do feel good that they're helping people out, but they still have this idea like, I'm going to be, if it's law school, I'm going to be an attorney, I'm going to work in a big firm. Like, that's what I want to do. I'm kind of doing this off on the side just to do it. Did you start feeling at some point there that, like, this is kind of what I want to do? Like, this help people, and that takes a very special type of person to be able to say, I want to lift others up, and that's what I want to do with my life. Did you start feeling that?
I don't know. I mean, I think the way you described it would give me more credit than I deserve in recognizing
and
that.
Back even on
as 19 or 20 years old. But if I try and unpack it, I like to have. Again, I'm talking about it now, looking back, right? I'm not saying I felt this at the time, but I like there to be meaning and purpose, the appropriate term, in what I'm doing. And, at that time, working with the students, I'll give you, examples. Yeah. We would go around, they had study hall where they were doing their homework. We'd go around, and I remember trying to help students with algebra problems. I wasn't that great in math. Obviously, I became a lawyer and, not a mathematician, but, to be able to help a student just understand how to do a math problem, like, and see their eyes kind of light up and some relief. I mean, I still remember that vividly. And so, it was satisfying. It was gratifying. And a lot of times also just talking about life experiences and, students had things going on in their families or whatever. And to feel like, hey, I was able to help someone. Obviously I felt good about that. But the other thing about the Upward Bound experience that it's hard for me to really explain, but in many ways that experience did for me what we were trying to do for the students. I kind of came into my own doing that. I kind of realized something about myself that, hey, I can connect with people. That's probably what I felt in that experience. And I'm not saying I never connected with people before, but I don't know that I saw it in the same way. And so it would be wrong for me to say, like, at that time, I knew my life purpose, and I can tell you there's a straight line from there to teaching at Loyola Law School, because it's not. We'll probably get into it. But I think that did light something in me, as saying, this is not only something where I feel that I'm helping someone, but I think if you help someone, you actually get something back, right? It feeds your soul. And again, there's no way at 19 or 20 I was thinking like that. But I think it was very impactful for me. And if you want to get into it, we can talk about some of the next stages that I went through after that and how the same theme kind of keeps coming back.
Yeah, well, why don't we do that then? So you're in college, and now it's time to go to law school. And how do you transition from college to law school? And do you sort of keep doing this type of work, or do you just start focusing on, I guess just school, right? And that's what I got to do. And
so I know for you, one of the important things about this podcast series is, messages to young folks, people who are, starting their journey. And so I want to make a point here and say, I didn't know when I was in college I was going to go to law school. In fact, if you go back, I would have said, no, I'm not going to be a lawyer. It was not on my mind, right? And I ended up taking 5 years between college and law school.
Oh, wow.
And so there's some stuff that happened during that time that's important. But at the same time that I was doing this work with Upward Bound, I was a public policy major. I did at that time sort of naively think maybe I would have a career in public service, elected office possibly. I've quickly learned that that was not what I wanted to do. But I learned that in part by spending my first year after college working for the California State Assembly as an assembly fellow, which is like a year-long internship. And so I was in Sacramento. Notably, my main project then was that I had an idea to create a bilingual teacher training program that was going to be a pathway from high school through college, through community college, through four-year college, to then placement at public schools as bilingual teachers. Yeah. And I was very fortunate that the assembly member who I worked for, Tom Hayden, said he would sponsor the bill. But the bill died a terrible death. First of all, in the Senate Appropriations Committee, they stripped the funding. And then it went to Governor Duke Majan's desk, and he vetoed it. And that was, I think, really an important turning point for me in realizing, if that's what public service is, I'm not about it. Now, again, that's a very microscopic view of public service. Like you shouldn't give up so easily. But my feeling was, here I had an idea for a good program that was going to help people.
Why not pass it? Yeah.
It seemed like it was helping current high school students who could go on to be bilingual teachers. And then it was going to help the students who were in school in the future because they were going to have
great bilingual teachers.
Great bilingual teachers who were going to be able to support them. And when you took the funding out of it, it's like, okay, well, there's no bill there. And then it got vetoed. So my thought was, that's not how you can make progress, at least not how I wanted to make progress. So I left. It was a one-year program. Again, valuable experience. And maybe this is a message, Kenny, for people. Yeah. I talked about law students with this. Sometimes you take a job and it turns out not to be a good fit for you. You're like, well, that was a waste. I actually don't think it's a waste. I think you can learn as much about what you don't want to do from certain experiences that can help you find your purpose or your passion. Sometimes you got to do something, and you don't know going in. I'm not saying go do something going in you won't like. That's not what I mean. I'm not saying people need to hurt themselves, but to be aware that sometimes those experiences actually are learning and help you to get to your ultimate destination, even if the end result of a particular position or experience seems kind of negative.
Yeah, and I think that's that's so key because in the moment, we may not feel like that, right? In the moment, you might feel that you just wasted a year. Yeah. In the moment, you might feel that, it's similar to a discussion between, success and failure, right? You were talking about how arriving at your purpose wasn't a linear thing. Same thing with success and failure, right? Success isn't linear. You have ups and downs all over the place. Absolutely. And it's in those failures, I think, that you learn the most because you learn what not to do, right? And where I should go, how I should approach things. And so here, I think that it's important for young people to understand that even a year, whatever it is, time that has gone past is very helpful in reorienting yourself. And you might find something out about yourself that you didn't know and sets you on that trajectory. Right?
Yeah. And I think it's also important. I am a dad, so maybe this is, too much sounding like a dad, but sometimes it's other things that happen during an experience that are not the primary focus of it that are important. So one of the things I had an opportunity to do when I was there for that year was work with the Chicano Latino Youth Leadership Program. It was a 1-week program for high school students to learn about politics and government and all that. And that was a little opportunity within my year, basically at the State Assembly, where I was back working with high school students again. And I think it was important because again, I only thought of this right now. I never thought about this before.
Awesome.
But having had that touch point with something that was meaningful and the juxtaposition, even though it was just a week, but the juxtaposition of that with the experience, in government service, it helped really, I think, convince me to make a move. So after my year in Sacramento was up, the State Assembly, I ended up going back to Occidental. And I worked in college admissions. And I wasn't so much expecting that I was going to build a career in college admissions. I really wanted to go back to working with students to help them to succeed in high school and get into college. And for me, it was a great opportunity to learn the inside operations of admissions so that if I was then getting me a position to help students get into college, I kind of had that. And I loved Occidental. It was a great school. So it wasn't hard to be an admissions rep. But one of the interesting things was I was more focused on students going to college than I was that they go to Occidental. Right? I wanted them to go there if it was the right place for them.
Yeah.
But when you're in admissions, you got to kind of,
sell job
you got to push students to go to your school because you survive based on having students go there. And so it was a great experience, but it was one where I couldn't really, be the full-time salesperson for a particular school.
Because you wanted the best for the student.
Yeah. And for many of them, it was Occidental, and I had no problem communicating that. Yeah. But in some instances, I found myself saying, well, look, you got to go where it's right for you.
That's awesome. And so that you have the year, doing public policy work. You have a week with students that sort of helps you realize that, this is kind of what I want to do. You go back to Occidental in admissions. Are you there for the next, was it 4 years?
No. So I was there for, I would say, about a year and a half. Okay. Then I ended up working on a sister program to Upward Bound. It was called Talent Search, Educational Talent Search. It didn't have a residential summer component. It was more like a year-long academic year program, but very similar goals. First generation, low-income students, help them prepare for college, success in high school, and moving on to college. And then I had an opportunity to go to a startup nonprofit called College Marketplace. I was doing a similar thing at a few schools, including Hamilton was one of the schools, which was kind of fun to be able to go back to my old high school. That's cool. So that accounted for the 5-year period. At a certain point, while I was at the Talent Search program, I started thinking about what's the future. I had been doing this kind of work for a number of years, and I don't think we've ever talked about this. No. I thought, if I should go to grad school, I think I want to be able to do educational policy work. Okay. And I might not spend the rest of my life doing direct work with students, but maybe I could try and work on policies, sort of like bilingual teacher training program or things like that, at a broader level. And so I looked at different graduate programs and ultimately decided on law because I felt like it wouldn't stop me from doing any of those things. Okay. Yeah. But it also could enable me to be a lawyer. And maybe that would give me an opportunity to do certain things that I couldn't do without that. And honestly, I imagined starting a family one day, and I at least believed that law degree and being a lawyer might provide some additional opportunities to get income in doing it, right? Yeah. Like it's a credential that could be worth something. So that's what ultimately led me at that point to go to law school, which was a big change because I had said in college, I wasn't going to do it.
Nowhere near it.
Yeah. My dad was pretty happy when I told him I was going to go to law school because I had told him before I wasn't. So.
Okay, great. So now you go to law school and, you graduate. Well, I'll put it this way. You graduate law school, and I don't mean to zoom past that period, okay. Right? But you graduate law school and you go to work at a big law. It's this prestigious law firm, Los Angeles, Sidley Austin. I mean, I went to law school. I know what that means. I have one of my best friends who went there, and I remember him getting the job and going, "Wow, like that's amazing! Like you made it, man." It's not to pocket watch, but it pays well. Yeah. It's a great living, and it's a great thing. So like from all sort of perspectives, somebody looking, outside looking in is like, "Well, you made it. You did it," and. You're working there, you become partner fairly soon, I think, comparatively speaking, and you're kind of living the life, right? And what is it, not necessarily going into that experience or talking about all of that, but of course you can, but what is it about what you had been doing previous to that still called you back to go back to school and help students while you were making a great living for yourself as an attorney? Yeah.
So it's a really good question, Kenny. And I think a lot of people might have that question. And I, believe to this day that when I told the folks at the firm I was leaving to teach, although they were supportive, I think they thought I was crazy, I had made partner at Sidley at the time. You could make partner after, you could be considered for partner in your 8th year. And I was very fortunate that I was able to make partner then. And I had been a partner for about 5 years at the time I left. So, and I get it. And financially, yeah, it's just, I've called it an unconscionable financial decision to leave being a partner at a firm like Sidley to teach. But when you feel like you need to do something, you got to do it. And I was thinking on my way over here today, how would I characterize this? And I came up with the term a responsible leap of faith. And what I mean by that is I encourage people to take leaps of faith. But when you are, like I was at the time, a father of 2, you got to be responsible in doing it. And so although it was unconscionable in many ways financially, because of the generosity of the firm, I had been able to save some money. So that cushioned it a little bit. And to be fair, the firm allowed me to continue to work there in my 2 summers, first 2 summers after I made the move over to Loyola. So that helped to bridge the gap, right?
But even that, I love, because thank you for saying that, responsible leap of faith, right? Because there's one thing being reckless and saying, hey, like I want to do this, and so I'm going to leave everything aside and just follow that. You were also a husband and a father, and you had people to look after and who were looking at you for they were dependents and for help. But you said, hey, I want to go back and do this, but prepare for that, right? So it wasn't an overnight sort of thing. I think that's really key and helpful as well, even when as young people, students, choices that we have to make. And it's, okay, how can you prepare for it? And it's not something that has to happen tomorrow or next week, but start thinking long term. How long did it take you to, when did you start thinking about it? And when did you start going, okay, let me start getting ready for this?
Yeah. So I don't know when exactly, when I was at the firm, I started thinking about possibly making a move. It was certainly before I made partner, because I remember having an internal discussion with myself about, I don't know who else you have an internal discussion with. So I didn't say myself. I had an internal discussion about, look, I'm a few years away from making partner. Shouldn't I just stay? And let me be clear. I loved Sidley.
Yeah.
The people there, still very close friends to this day. They took incredible care of me and taught me what it means to be a lawyer. So this was nothing negative about the firm. It was me not feeling enough personal satisfaction in what I was doing. And for people who may not know, because you and I talk about it like everyone knows what it means to be in a big firm. I mean, what it means is that a lot of the matters you're working on are, very high stakes litigation. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars at stake that often take many years to resolve and are typically business to business disputes. It could be individuals on one side, but they're typically sort of higher net worth individuals. So it could be shareholders of a corporation suing the corporation, what have you. And, I on occasion represented in employers, in disputes. And so it's very personal to the people involved. But at the end of the day, these cases normally resolve with some sort of a money transfer, right? Either, the defendant pays something to the plaintiff. And when I say defendant and plaintiff here, I'm talking about like corporation to corporation, wealthy individuals to corporation or wealthy individuals. And so, there's a money transfer, or if you're on the defense side, you succeed in not having to make a money transfer. Your client doesn't have to make a money transfer. All very important matters that I took very seriously, but they weren't as meaningful to me on a day-to-day basis. And it often took years to see results because it's just the nature of these kind of cases. I had the opportunity while I was at the firm to do some pro bono work that was very impactful for me. I vividly remember working on an asylum case for a Buddhist monk from Bangladesh. And I still think there was divine intervention in getting a successful resolution to that matter. And that was really meaningful to me.
How did that feel?
Yeah, it felt really good because this was very different from the typical case I was working on. And the firm was supportive of those kind of cases, but the firm doesn't make money on those. So it's a business. You still have to understand that. But the other thing that I got to do while I was at the firm was to do some work with high school students. And I actually have to thank our current dean of Loyola Law School, Brietta Clark, who was one of my closest friends. We were actually colleagues at Sidley for a little while. She helped me to find an opportunity to work with students at Dorsey High School. And that was a big deal for me, because I got a chance to do some work again with high school students. And what I was doing was more law-related stuff. So not very successfully, but I did assist with their mock trial team.
Yeah.
They would benefit from you and Sharon more than they would benefit from me.
Awesome. You did that.
And we brought lawyers out to speak to the students. And that was probably around 2005 that I started doing that. So, right around the time that I made partner, I had a little more freedom to do some of that stuff. And so slowly but surely, I had more and more conviction that I needed to make a change. But I'm going to be honest, Kenny, I never really thought about teaching. If we talked about it briefly, most of the roles that I had were more in a counselor, advisor, maybe some tutoring, but not a teacher. I never really taught.
Yeah.
And so I didn't consider myself a teacher per se.
Right.
So I was looking at things I could do. I looked at maybe nonprofits, and nothing was really clicking. I had some interviews, and the response was, well, you got an interesting background, but we got people that have been doing this for the last few years or more. You're making this big transition, right, from law. And as much as I could tout transferable skills, of which there are many,
Absolutely.
experience counts, right? Like, I get it. So I reached a point where I said, let me think more about this teaching thing. And Dean Clark was not the dean then. She was a professor. She said, you should consider applying for a position at Loyola. I'm like, I'm not a teacher. Like, I don't think I could do that. She said, trust me, you can do it. And she has always seen stuff in me that I haven't.
awesome.
And I want to share that because I know this is about helping young people. Sometimes you may not see things in yourself that other people do. Don't be too quick to disregard it or downplay it. Like, I was very dismissive, not of her in a disrespectful way, but like, I didn't believe in myself the way she believed in me. And I'm, 30 plus years old at this time. I mean, this is not like, a teenager who's not had a lot of experience, but I share that to say, you may have those feelings at any stage in life, but sometimes other people see something that you can't see. And I got to give her credit. She saw it.
Right.
So I applied, and Kenny, this is interesting. Famously, I didn't get the job.
Oh. Really?
I didn't get hired in the initial round at Loyola. And I was really stung because through the process, I really wanted to do it. But lo and behold, another opportunity came up a few months later, and there was a kind of a rush. And you'll appreciate this. I got a voicemail from the dean of the law school while I was in a luxury box at then Staples Center for Game 1 of the Lakers-Celtics NBA Finals.
Oh, no. You were at that game.
I was at that game. And
I was watching it.
Yeah, and I had never been to a championship game before, and I was in a suite. And who was a suite? It was a firm suite. Like, it was a firm connection. The firm didn't have a suite, but it was firm connection. And I share that because I've never been back. and that's because it's a different lifestyle, right? Yeah. But when I finally could hear the message, I said, absolutely, I want to do it. And so I sort of took the plunge. But to get back to something you said, I don't want to miss out on an opportunity. It had been a number of years that I've been thinking about this. So I had been saving some money and really trying to, be mindful of it. Professors get paid a lot compared to a lot of people in the society, but they don't get paid a lot compared to like what lawyers at big firms make. So it was definitely a financial hit.
Yeah.
And I want to get back to your question, but I feel it's important to share this because one of my sort of life philosophies now, which I don't think I had before, is things do tend to work out. if you're doing the right thing. One of my biggest fears about making this move was it was going to reduce my ability to save for college for my kids. And I know you told me to bring something. I brought a picture of my kids because they're the most important thing in the world to me. And I was concerned about that. But this was a sort of still responsible leap of faith. I hope that things would work out. One of the great benefits of being at Loyola is they have a tuition remission program for employees. And so my son ended up getting his degree from Loyola through the tuition remission program. And so one of my biggest fears, right, was that this move I was making was going to affect the kids. And I knew this tuition remission existed, but you can't count on it. But my son took care of his business, was able to get accepted, and the tuition remission benefit kicked in. And, now my daughter, who's a freshman, finished her freshman year at USC, I know there's some issues for you with USC. I used to have those issues. No more.
I used to too. Chelsea's went there now, right? We kind of have to, we put up with it now.
Yeah. So she's had an amazing experience, but there's a tuition exchange program where even if it's a school that's not the school that you're employed by participates, you could potentially get a tuition benefit at that school. So I've been totally blessed, Kenny, to have that opportunity. And that's led me to say things can work out.
Yeah.
You may not see it at the time, but if you take, like I said, responsible leap of faith, it can work out.
And you won't say this, so I'll say it that I think the decision that you made to go to Loyola and teach, while as you said, right, is a financial hit, comparatively speaking. But what you went to do is, and what you've gone on to do is impact so many people and help so many students in ways that have shaped their lives. I'm not just talking about you gave advice or you taught a class. You've helped shape people's lives. I can speak personally from my life, right? And I want to talk a little bit about that with you, but just how the deep and lasting impact it made on my life. And I thank you so much for it. And I think that's one of those things that, you talk about everything working out. That move that you made to help folks out was something that was selfless. And things will work out for good people. Well, and you won't say it, so that's why I'm saying it.
Yeah, I appreciate Kenny. It means a lot, not just generally, but specifically coming from you, because you live by that. You live to help people. You've done it since I've known you in law school, and even in the way what you've chosen to do in your legal career is, one of the most personal, helpful ways to represent people who have potentially some of the worst experiences they're going to have in their lives, and they need someone, and you're there. So it means a lot coming from you. I've said this to people on a couple of occasions. If you're going to leave the firm like I did, and you're going to teach, and you're going to give up the financial compensation and maybe status or whatever comes with being in a place like that, you got to have a good reason to do it. And I still, even when I set foot on campus for teach my first class, I wasn't sure I was going to be a good teacher, but I knew I did have a purpose in being there, and my purpose was to try and help students every day that I could. And that I feel like I was a good attorney. I feel like I represented my clients well, but I feel like the main reason I've had whatever success I've had at Loyola has been because I am really passionate about doing it in a way that I don't know that I could have been as passionate about big firm law practice. I cared very much about it and always tried to do absolute best I could for my clients. But there's something different for me, and I don't know that I can fully explain it, but there's something different for me about the work that I get to do with students. And you characterize it as selfless, and I appreciate that. But I want to be really clear, Kenny. I get as much from the students I work with, if not more, than they might get from me. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm just here to serve. I mean, I certainly want to serve. But I get so much from it. I mean, Kenny, I'm gonna be honest, coming here to your office, your name on the building, this space that you have, I mean, I remember when you were in law school, and to now see you and what you've accomplished, and to see your sister here working with you, and to see your brother Brandon, it's really incredible.
Yeah. No, thank you. And
I'm getting a little emotional here.
no, thank you, Professor, for saying that. You know, well, I was going to ask something else, but I'll mention this right now. And you talked about, and I love that, it is selfless, and I thank you for saying that it's something that you take something from it as well. I will say the fact that you've gotten those, Teacher of the Year awards as so many times, I think is indicative of who you are and how students feel about you. I will tell you that I remember when I met you when I was heading into my second year in law school. That's when I got into the civil litigation practice. It was this amazing course that you helped get going there, and that, you've run, which is essentially runs us from beginning of a case up to right before trial. For somebody who had no experience, had no idea what litigation was. All I knew is that I wanted to be an attorney, but I had no idea what it actually was. That was so valuable to me. But I remember, I've told this before, but our listeners will know that I was undocumented when I was in law school. I'm a DACA recipient now, and I had at that point told like my two close friends, my best friends in law school, Brian Casillas, Jeff Kelman. And
I know both of them. Good guys.
Yeah. And they knew, and maybe a couple of people in administration, just because there were financial stuff that I needed to get straightened out and all that stuff. But that was it. And it's at that time, that was before DACA passed. There was still always sort of this lingering sort of feel and fear in the background of people knowing. And it's not that it limited my life. It's not I didn't live with this fear, thankfully, but it was something that I was careful. I wasn't gonna go around telling people that I was undocumented. Yeah. But I do remember, I think it was the first class even, like coming up to you after class, and just from my interactions with you briefly, and then when you taught the class, and I remember going like, wow, this is somebody that like I can trust. And that's not something people know us growing up. We're a very close family. We're very close, and kind of we don't really say anything to anybody else because we trust each other, and that's kind of it. Mm-hmm. But I shared that with you, and I remember telling you like, this is sort of my situation. I want to be an attorney. Like, I don't, can I learn from you? Or what should I do? And that you were not only receptive and accepting, but you were like very willing to like help me and point me in the right direction. And I think it's, from my experience, and I know that's just one of many, because many other students feel this way about you. And so I know that you take something from it as well, and you keep doing it, but it means the world to us. It means the world to me. It meant the world to me then, and it continues to mean the world to me now. It's why, you know this, right? You call and you say, hey, like, we need X, Y, Z. You're like, yeah, let's do it, Well, because we very much, me, my whole family, and I know I speak on behalf of Sharon and Brandon and my entire family, my folks know you as well, even though they haven't met you as often, right? Like, they know who you are, because the impact, and that's just one small example of how you've touched students and have helped guide them in moments of uncertainty.
Well, Kenny, it means a lot. I have absolutely no doubt you would have succeeded in every way that you have without any involvement from me. But the fact that I could be some part of your journey is incredibly meaningful. And I don't know what it was that made you feel that way. I'm just grateful that you did. I did. If I were going to speculate, I think, and certainly is how I feel. I don't know if it comes across that way, but I genuinely want to be there and help students. When I get up every morning, that's what I'm thinking about. And again, I go back to, you don't leave the firm like I did without a real purpose, and trying to put myself into it as much as I can. And so it really means a lot to hear you say that you felt, whether it was a matter of trust or comfort, approachability, that's a message that I want to convey at all times to all students. And in particular, I want to be a resource for students who have, like, I can't think of a person who has a better support system than you do with your family. I mean, your family is amazing. And I've gotten a chance now to work with all 4 of the Ramirez siblings. I've gotten a chance to meet your folks. So you have a tremendous support system. So when I talk about this, I'm not in any way diminishing the support system that students have with their family, extended family, friends. But I'm talking about familiarity with the law school experience, the practice of law. And so I want to be clear that what I'm saying is it's an additive thing. I'm not taking anything away from the support system that students have, but that, you know, and this I think goes all the way back to where we started our conversation, right? There's a gap that could exist for some students. And those are the students that I'm most passionate about helping. I think I now take it affectionately because I'm old enough to have been referred to as a law school dad. At first, I was like, I'm not that old, but like I'm a dad of a 24-year-old and a 19-year-old. So I'm that old. But I've sort of embraced that role of being someone who can provide that kind of support for students with respect to the law school experience. And sometimes outside stuff is involved. And so I'm there for that too.
Yeah, no, and I think that's so key. I've told this story before, but for example, when I remember being on the trial team at Loyola and, tried out, did well in the tryouts. I remember feeling like really good, like the closing statement and, it was like really well. And the teachers, professors, the students on the team were like, wow, it was amazing. Like, you're going to be a star. And then we do our first mock trial and I am so lost. People were objecting, and I've never been somebody to lack for confidence, but my confidence was rocked. Sure. And for months, I thought I'd never been somebody who looked at myself and been like, oh, like I'm less smart than other people. Yeah, people have more aptitude, et cetera. But like I know what I can bring, right? But man, I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I learned, let's say, like the rules or certain things, and I was like, oh, it wasn't a matter of like you're less smart or you don't. It's just like there were things I didn't know and I wasn't aware of because I had never experienced this before. And so once you get that knowledge, you're like, oh, okay, now you can enter, now you can play the game, now you can perform, whatever, right? And those are the things you asked me. To come back and teach again, something for me that's never something I had considered doing. I loved it. I thought it was a blast. And it's funny.
The students loved you as well, right? Yeah. I mean, let's be clear. It was something that I had no doubt you would be great at it. I knew you also had Sharon to support you, and that would be a real bonus. But I think you're naturally gifted at being a teacher, being a communicator, and from everything I heard, the students had an incredible experience with you.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I absolutely loved it, and I mentioned the previous story because when I taught, that really was what I was trying to bring to the table and from the very beginning, and I constantly reminded them, and I think they felt comfortable enough as we got into it. It was just like, listen, ask me any question. If you think it's a dumb question, that's a question I want you to ask, right? If I ask a question and you answer it and it's wrong, I'm going to be excited because it's going to be a learning opportunity, okay? So nobody feel like insecure here. Please ask. And if you don't understand something, if something doesn't make sense, even if it sounds basic or you think everybody else knows it, ask it because it's those like little gaps of knowledge or experience that really just... I love everything that you've told us because that's what you've been trying to do with students, right? It's be that additive sort of force and resource to fill in those gaps and then help put them on the same level playing field as anybody else. Right. And quite frankly, have an advantage with all the additional courses that you've created and you've helped run and all that stuff. And thank you for doing that. And today, I know you were dean for a few years. Now you're going back to teaching. What is it about this that excites you?
So I got to give a shout out to all the people who take on administrative positions, including, I mentioned, Dean Clark. It's a lot. It's a lot, and it's hard. And when you're in that type of position, you want to make a difference in the school the best you can. But I've been at Loyola now 14 years. In July, it'll be 14 years. And for those 3 years, which admittedly were during COVID, which was a difficult time, I had the least amount of contact with students that I'd had throughout the entire time. And so what I'm looking forward to most is getting back to having that regular contact with students. I can't wait to be back in the classroom and teach the civil litigation course. Fortunately, I'll be co-teaching with Professor Parrish, who I know you know well.
She was amazing.
She's fantastic. And I think it's a benefit to the students that she'll be there to buffer my rust as I, get back into teaching. But to be back in the classroom, and I'm very fortunate because the course I teach, civil litigation course, it's what I did every day at the law firm, civil litigation work. And the philosophy, the premise of the course is it's everything that we as litigators wish we would have known before we set foot in the law firm, whether it's a small plaintiff's firm or a large firm like we've been talking about, Sidley. And so to try and provide that advantage, and just be clear, that's any student who takes the course, right? And I think it's beneficial for that. So I'm really excited to do that. And I'm excited to get back into the role that I really love to have, which is counselor and advisor for students. They have a lot of times it's questions about the process of getting a job. Right?
Yeah,
just not knowing, right? What kind of questions will I be asked? What questions should I ask? How do I choose between different offers? Things like that. So to be in a position where I hope that students will feel like they can come to me. Obviously, when you're in administration, it's a little bit like, you're in the principal's office at a high school, and most of the time, students don't want to go there. And so I hope I can build a bridge back to students who only know me from having been an administrator. And the other thing I'm really excited about, Kenny, and I know you'll appreciate this, and I plan to hopefully get you involved in it. I want to devote a big chunk of my time to what I call pipeline or outreach programs. Okay. This is the total full circle now to Upward Bound. I really want to do programs for high school students and college students to increase the number of students, particularly first-generation students from different backgrounds, who will consider law school and a legal career, and hopefully through some of the programming we can offer, be better prepared to succeed when they get there. And so I hope that I will be able to devote a chunk of my time to doing that. But I know the only way that's going to work is if I'm able to enlist folks like you, your sister, your brother, and other folks who are current students and alums who can share their own experiences. Yeah. Because I think at this stage, I mean, high school kids are like my kids' age, right? Even now younger than my kids. And although I think I can be helpful, I think it's really important for them to have folks who are closer to their age, closer to their experience, who can talk about their journeys and how they got there and be an inspiration. So I think of myself now in somewhat of a facilitator role, trying to connect the next generation of lawyers with the very newest generation of lawyers. And I'm still including you in there. You're not old enough to be outside of that. Yeah. And so that's part of what I'm most looking forward to.
That's awesome. And you're still doing that same work, and I love that you're thinking about also because your concern is still the students, right? And it's like, how can you motivate them? How can you inspire them and stuff? And so even this thought of bringing in the attorneys and younger attorneys and all that, I think that's great because the kids love that as well. I think when you see, and we've gone to speak, for example, at high schools or career day, and you have a class, and I talk to them, and then afterwards we get letters from them, and saying thank you, and like, wow, you like explained it. Now I know that I want to be an attorney, or I didn't know I wanted to be an attorney. Now I want to be an attorney. And it's like they never thought of themselves that way, and now they see somebody else who's from similar background or who kind of grew up in the same sort of area, and then go, wow, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. And that's exactly the type of effect that we want to have, right?
And you were naturally going to do what you do. That's just who you are. That's how you were raised. That you have a family and personal culture of giving back. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But few things bring me more joy than to see students who I've had the pleasure and opportunity to work with then do the kind of things that you're doing. Yeah. And there's an unbelievable pool of inspirational talent among current and recent graduates, current students and recent graduates of the law school. Mm-hmm. And I just want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to connect that amazing group of folks with the folks who can be inspired by them going forward.
Sure. That's awesome. I wanted to ask this question. I've been meaning to ask it, and the conversation's just been good, so we let the conversation go where it goes. But going just back a little bit, and a pointed question here. When you were at Sidley, before you made the move to come back to Loyola, you were clearly still doing an amazing job. You became partner, and you were succeeding and excelling. And can you speak a little bit, because I think it's important that even when we may be in a situation that we are not entirely enthusiastic about, right? The importance of still pursuing excellence wherever you're at, even if you kind of want to move somewhere else, and you make that move and you do the, you're careful about that leap of faith, the responsible leap of faith.
Right.
But the importance of kind of where you're at and the type and quality of output that you're producing no matter what.
Yeah. So that's a really phenomenal question, Kenny. And for me, there's a few things that I need to make sure are clear. So number one, although I found my passion and my calling in being a law school professor, which again, I didn't know I was going to do. Until I made that move, I considered myself a lawyer, a litigator, and a value. I wanted to be a valuable member of the team at Sidley representing our clients. Mm-hmm. And so even if maybe perhaps I didn't have the same passion for that I found in teaching, this is something I know you understand full well because your whole life has been about it. It's a work ethic, right? I had a job to do, and I try and share this with students. When you're a lawyer, you are in a professional service business, and the clients are counting on, big corporations, lawyers could come and go. But at that moment in time, I'm a member of the legal team supporting the client. And that's my first duty. Mm-hmm. And I have to do everything in my power to serve that client. And so part of it, that work ethic comes from that sense of duty, that sense of responsibility that the clients are not just paying the bill, but they're entrusting. You're going to be a lawyer. Clients are trusting you to represent their interests in an environment where they can't do it themselves, or at least it's not likely to be as successful, right? If you represent yourself in court, you mentioned your first mock trial, you didn't know all the rules. I mean, imagine you're a client who doesn't have a lawyer, you're a party in a case. You need the lawyer. So part of it was my sense of duty and responsibility to the client, but another part of it was this firm. They were paying my salary. Yeah. And I, first of all, think it's important to work for what you get, obviously. But I also, Kenny, I couldn't afford not to have a job, right? I appreciate you saying I was successful. Yeah, I guess I was, and that I made partner. I still think sometimes maybe I was just lucky, or, they weren't looking that day, or, whatever it might have been. But I before you can get a responsible leap of faith, you got a responsible source of income. Yeah, and so I really wanted to make sure that I was doing my part. And, I think there are times when, we might wish we were doing something else. Mm-hmm. I know it's got to be true for you and your work. For me, there were weekends that I was working. There were nights that I was working. Mm-hmm. That's what the job called for. And I think when you sign up for this, when you sign up to be a lawyer, you know that's, I mean, you can choose to do different types of things in law practice, but when you work at a big firm, I think when you run your own practice, you got to be willing to put in what's necessary to get the job done.
I remember when I started at the first firm, I mean, I was there every day basically and all day, and you just kind of don't have a life for a few years, and it's just kind of what you do, right? And it's what I wanted to do, so you're there.
And I think work-life balance is important, right? Family is the most important thing to me. But when you're working at a law firm, you have clients, that's going to be a big demand. And then, quite frankly, we talked about it. I was making pretty good money, and I was very well aware that they're not paying me that just because they like me. They're paying me that to do a high quality work and a high quantity of work, because that's the business of a law firm, right? And when you're on an hourly rate, which that was our billing was hourly, I was expected to do the best possible work in every moment I was putting in, and basically earn my keep. And I really can't stress enough for young people, as a point you were mentioning, I just want to reiterate it. There are going to be times when work is just hard and you'd rather be doing something else. But you're making an investment in yourself, and you've got to do that to get where you want to go. And if you find that work and the demands are inconsistent with things you want in your life, then consider making a move. But you can't just what they call now quiet quitting, where you just sort of stop performing. Because that's not only a disservice to your employer, or if you're representing clients, but ultimately a disservice to yourself. Find something. And ultimately, I did find another thing. Interestingly, I don't work less time as a professor than I did as an attorney at a big firm, but I work in different ways, and I have fewer competing demands on my time.
Okay. Yeah. And we've talked. That's an amazing answer. Thank you for saying that. And I think that's the quiet quitting being a disservice to yourself. Ultimately, I think is something that's very key for listeners to hear. We've talked a lot about the move from big law to teaching, and you've mentioned the financial hit. You've mentioned several of these things, but I think there have been really amazing sort of positives that you've also discussed as a result of that. But can you talk about how also the sort of different living, sort of the word is the phrase is escaping me right now, but sort of the time that you can spend with family, with your kids, how that has changed as well. And the additive, the addition that being able to be a professor and teach that has allowed you to spend with your family and still pursue sort of your passion. So sort of the plug for like teaching and people who as I mentioned, I have friends who, wanted to teach as well. And like, that is what is a passion and motivates them. And it's beautiful to see. And sometimes maybe people might think that that's not really a career choice because, they have to be X, Y, Z. But can you talk about sort of how your life sort of changes from one to the other in the positive? Right?
Sure. So don't let me forget to answer that question, but I want to start off with, I've kind of viewed employment settings, work settings, and life choices as being made on, broadly speaking, three components, right? There's compensation that you get from your employment, there's time, and then there's like what the work means to you. It is really hard to have all three of those because some of them are in inverse relationships, right? So typically compensation, what you get paid for something, is directly tied to how much you work. So time. It can be really hard to have a very well-paying job that doesn't demand a lot of your time. Typically those go together, but work in opposite directions. And then how much the work means to you often can come at the expense of compensation as well. And so I've always felt like if you can hit two, if you can have quality in two of those three, that's a pretty good place to be. Getting all three is really tough. When I was at the firm, I certainly had compensation. Time was really difficult. First of all, we're on a billable hour, so you get paid based on work that you do. But when you're in litigation, you know this, right? You're being pulled in a bunch of different directions because you have your client's needs. Then you have an opposing counsel who really doesn't have any interest other than to defeat you, so they're not going to make your life better. Then you have the court that has its process to follow, and so that can dictate when you're available and when you're not. If the opposing party decides to file an ex parte on Friday night, Friday afternoon, and well, you know what your weekend is going to be is trying to work on that. So, and there was a lack of control over the schedule as a litigator that I experienced, and so that would be I'd have plans to do things with family, and I definitely did a lot of family stuff, but there were times when I couldn't. At the law school, there are certain set times. I have to be in class to teach. I have to be available for office hours. Like those are things that really can't be messed with. But around that, my time is much more flexible. And the students often will reach out with things that they need help with or questions they have. Other faculty members, staff might need something. But it's not the same as an opposing counsel demanding time. So I found I had a lot more flexibility to go to school events, to go to attend, my daughter's theater performances, dance recitals, my son athletic events, or he was stage managing shows, so his shows. So I had a lot more flexibility in that. And, with teaching, I take it very seriously. I try to respond to students as quickly as I can. But it's not the same as when a court sends you a notice demanding something immediately. Then you have to drop everything and respond. And I think students are much more understanding of the flexibility, that we have in responding. So hopefully that was responsive to your question. But definitely there was more time flexibility and less stress every day, worrying that if I'm taking a moment to do something with family, I'm missing something that I had to be doing for a client.
Speaking of family, you brought today a photo of your kids. That's at the graduation? Okay, that's that. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the photo there?
Yeah, so that's a photo. Timing is everything. So my son, Brendan, graduated LMU in May of 2023, so just almost a year ago. My daughter, Hope, graduated high school in June of 2023. So that's them wearing their cap and gowns from their respective graduations. So it was kind of synced up so that they graduated different levels, but at the same time. And although I think everybody feels this way when their kids have milestone, graduating college, graduating high school. That was obviously meaningful for that reason. But as we talked about before, the fact that my son was able to graduate from college and we were able to make it happen financially because of the generosity of Loyola and its tuition remission, and my daughter graduating knowing she was about to go off to USC and that we could make it work because of the tuition benefit, I don't take that lightly. So it's more than the milestone and their accomplishments and being amazing kids is significant. But for our conversation today, it was pretty significant as well because of the fact that when I took that responsible, or maybe not, leap of faith, it didn't interfere with what one of the things I cared very much about for the family. And so I consider myself really blessed to be their dad, and for them to be now pursuing their dreams. And so it's really special. And just a quick side note, Kenny, you and I have talked about this offline before, but I just want to talk about the unexpected opportunities that come up. So my son was attending Loyola. He was working with the athletics program. He had an opportunity to do a play-by-play broadcast for the LMU women's basketball team. Shout out to the Lions. And he invited me to be his color commentator. We can question his judgment on that. But for the last 5 years, we've been doing those broadcasts together. And there's never a point in my life when I thought that I would be a play-by-play or not play-by-play, a color commentator, have anything to do with the broadcast for basketball, let alone get to do that with my son. He might have gone to Loyola even if I hadn't taken the job at Loyola Law School, but this goes into that things work out. And this was just a unique, special opportunity. Has nothing to do with law, has nothing to do with my college, graduate school experience. It's good fortune for me in many respects, but I just want to send that message out that sometimes things you don't expect happen, and I am grateful to him. I'm grateful to the school and the coaches, the athletic program and the women on the team for letting me be a part of that. But it has nothing to do with anything that I studied for. It's just a great opportunity, and I don't know. I felt that's part of sharing their picture is also telling that part of the story.
No, thank you. And I was going to follow up with that. So thank you for saying that. I love that. Thanks so much for everything that you've shared with us today. I think there's so many nuggets there and just wisdom for our listeners, young people to take home. And this thing that we call life is a wonderful journey, unexpected turns, and listening and hearing from others who've gone through that experience helps us along our way. And that's, as I've mentioned before, it's something that you've done and continue to do. And I've felt it personally in my life. And thank you for your time so much. Thank you for driving out here to come meet us.
Happy to do
out in San Bernardino. Again, from behalf of myself and my family, thank you so much for who you are and what you continue to do so selflessly, and for the entire Loyola community.
Kenny, thank you. Obviously, I hope something of what I said is somewhat valuable. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for all that you're doing, right? When I was at a similar stage that you are in your career, I was much more just focused on trying to make it every day in the career. And the way that you are just 100% committed to not only being an outstanding lawyer for your clients, but to give back constantly, it's really an inspiration to me. And I'm just grateful that you felt that there was enough for me to contribute, that I can sit in this seat where other amazing people have sat and will sit, and just know that whatever you need. I know you said whatever I need, you'll be there, but same is true, and the feeling is mutual, and nothing but love and respect for you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to our wonderful guest, Professor Gary Craig, with us today, and for everybody on all our listeners, all our viewers on The Art of Purpose. This has been another episode. Thank you for watching. Definitely encourage you to follow, to subscribe, to leave any comments. Love engaging with all of you. Thank you for everyone who's already left a review and a comment. We appreciate it. We're so excited to continue this journey with you, and we hope that, and we know that today, that there were so many things that can help you in your life. If there was something in this episode that you thought was really helpful for a loved one of yours, someone special in your life, send it to them, as I think it's something that we want to continue to do, encourage as many people as possible. So until next time, this has been The Art of Purpose.